What you're about to hear is built from official government documents, FBI interview summaries, internal emails, recorded interviews, and Department of Justice releases. Some of these claims contradict each other. Some are clearly unreliable. Some are horrifying. Some feel absurd. This is not an accident, because when truth is mixed with nonsense at scale, the human brain does one thing very well. It shuts down. Tonight, we are not doing that. Tonight, we are not asking, was Epstein guilty? That question was answered years ago. We are asking something far more dangerous. What kind of system creates someone like Jeffrey Epstein and then protects him for decades? Because once you see the pattern, you will never see this story the same way again. In January, the United States Department of Justice released what it described as a historic act of transparency. More than 3.5 million pages of Epstein-related documents, emails, interview summaries, videos, photos, and financial record. The Attorney General's office stood at a podium and assured the public that nothing was being withheld for reasons of national security, that redactions were minimal, that victims were protected, that the process had been meticulous. Those statements do not survive contact with documents themselves. And here's the first conspiracy you need to understand. Transparency does not come in data dumps. Transparency comes in prosecutions. What we were given instead was a flood so large it guaranteed something else. Exhaustion. No narrative structure, no prioritization, no contextual roadmap. Just millions of pages dropped on the public with the unspoken expectation that most people would glance at a headline, skim a thread, feel overwhelmed, and move on. That is not incompetence. That is strategy. Because when everything is released at once, nothing is absorbed. So let's slow this down. Because buried inside these files is something far more revealing than any single accusation. It's the redactions. You are told explicitly that redactions exist solely to protect victims. That sounds reasonable until you start seeing what is actually being redacted. Words like none, city names, publicly available journalist names, Wikipedia article fragments, case numbers in one document and not in another, the same individual redacted on one page and fully visible on the next. In some cases, the redaction boxes don't even line up properly, allowing underlying text to be read anyway. This is not how professional redaction works. In fact, it is so bad that it suggests one of the two possibilities. Either A, the most powerful law enforcement agencies on earth are shockingly incompetent, or B, these documents were processed automatically, likely by software with minimal human review. Both possibilities are deeply disturbing because either the system is broken or it is deliberately shielding itself from accountability by claiming incompetence. And there is a long historical precedent for institutions choosing option B. Now we get to the most important pattern in the entire release. The FBI National Threat Operations Center processes public tips. Many of the Epstein-related documents originate here. These tips range widely. Some are clearly delusional. Some are flagged as not credible. Some result in no follow-up. Others quietly generate investigative leads. Here's the key detail. They're all stored together. Absurd allegations sit next to the serious ones. Unverifiable claims are placed beside corroborated timelines. This creates a psychological effect that intelligence agencies understand extremely well. When the public encounters a data set where 30% is obviously insane, 40% is unverifiable, and another 30% is disturbing but plausible, the brain just throws it all out. This is not new. This is called information poisoning. It ensures that anyone asking legitimate questions can be dismissed with a single phrase. Have you seen the kind of stuff people believe about this? And once that phrase is deployed, investigations die. Not because the truth isn't there, but because no one wants to touch the mess. For years, Jeffrey Epstein existed only as a symbol, a mugshot, a headline, villain. Now we can hear his voice.
Let me give you that I know in my case. In fact,
why is it not dirty money?
Because I earned it.
Hours of interview footage show a man who is calm, articulate, and deeply unafraid. And then comes the moment that should chill you. He is asked directly whether he believes he might be the devil himself.
Do you think you're the devil himself?
No, but I do have a good mirror.
It's a serious question. Do you think you're the devil himself?
I don't know. Why would you say that?
Because you have all the attributes. You're incredibly smart. You remember, the devil is
Was
somebody
the devil
knows
smart?
The devil's brilliant. You read Milton's Paradise Lost.
No,
There is no laughter, no mockery, no dismissal. There is hesitation. People who do not see themselves as morally untethered do not react that way. What you are seeing is not guilt, it is confidence. The confidence of someone who knows that consequences are for other people. And here's where most narratives collapse. Because when you actually listen to Epstein speak at length, something becomes clear. Because if Epstein wasn't a financial wizard, and he wasn't an elite academic, and he wasn't a political official, then intelligence, money, and authority were being routed through him, not generated by him. Which leads to a far more uncomfortable question. Was Epstein the architect or the interface? You see, an interface does not need to understand the system. It only needs to connect its parts. The expanded transcripts change everything here, because now we are no longer dealing with vague associations. We are dealing with emails, explicit invitations, logistics, travel, wild party language, helicopters, ratios. This is not speculation, this is correspondence. And it occurs years after Epstein's 2008 conviction, which destroys the final defense that people didn't know. They knew. They went anyway. And the pattern repeats across industries: tech, finance, politics, media, academia. Not because Epstein was powerful, but because he was useful. Now we enter the part of the story where language changes. You'll notice that in the documents, conversations stop being casual. Phrases repeat, like "not for email," "better discussed online," "will explain," "person." These are not phrases used by normal people conducting normal business. They are phrases used by people who understand surveillance. One of the most overlooked moments in the Epstein files is not an email from Epstein to someone else, but a request Epstein made about himself. Jeffrey Epstein filed an FOIA request to the CIA asking whether the agency had records acknowledging an affiliation with him. Think about that. Why would a private citizen ever ask that question? And more importantly, why would the CIA respond the way that they did? Their reply did not say, "No, we have no relationship with you." Instead, they said, "We can neither confirm nor deny the existence of classified records." That response has a name. It is a Glomar response. It is only used when acknowledging the truth would itself be revealing. You do not receive a Glomar response unless something exists that cannot be discussed. That does not prove Epstein was an intelligence asset, but it does prove this: the intelligence community took the question seriously, and that alone should stop you cold. To understand Epstein's reach, you have to talk about inheritance, not money, access. Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, was no minor figure. He was a media baron, a geopolitical intermediary, a man with alleged ties to multiple intelligence services. When Robert Maxwell died under mysterious circumstances, his network did not disappear. Networks do not die, they are inherited. Epstein did not build his connections from nothing. He stepped into a space that already existed. The files reference Epstein discussing Robert Maxwell's access to world leaders, intelligence figures, and foreign governments. And again, the pattern repeats. When someone's crimes become inconvenient, their utility determines their fate. Maxwell was tolerated. Epstein was tolerated until tolerance became a liability. One of the most damning sections of the expanded transcripts involves correspondence between Epstein and a Russian official. In this exchange, Epstein describes a young woman allegedly attempting to blackmail powerful businessmen in New York. He frames this situation as bad for business. Let's be very precise here. This is not a rumor. This is not a third-party accusation. This is Epstein directly contacting a foreign government official asking for help with a woman who claims she was exploited by powerful men. That single email obliterates the official narrative that Epstein operated alone. Blackmail requires 4 things: documentation, leverage, protection, and coordination. And here we see coordination. You were told there was no trafficking network, yet here's Epstein discussing a woman attempting to expose one. That contradiction alone deserves years of investigation. Instead, it receives silence. Now, this is where the story becomes genuinely uncomfortable. Scattered throughout the files are emails that reference quote-unquote torture videos, humiliation, control, and degradation. Some of these are clearly unserious. Some may be role play, Some were impossible to verify, but here's the key point. They are not removed. Instead of being isolated or contextualized, they are dumped into the same pool as everything else. Why? Because extreme language discredits adjacent truths. This is the final layer of information poisoning. When someone brings up Epstein's connections, the response becomes, "Oh, you mean the torture video people?" And the conversation ends. That doesn't protect victims. It protects institutions. One of the most volatile parts of the files involves Donald Trump, not because of a single allegation, but because of contradiction. Public statements say, "I cut ties. I want nothing to do with him. I was never in the room." The documents say something else. Emails, invitations, visits, correspondence years after those public statements. This does not automatically prove criminal behavior, but it does prove dishonesty. And dishonesty at this level is never accidental. What matters here is not Trump specifically, it's the pattern. Public distancing paired with private proximity. That pattern repeats across names, industries, and decades. By the time Epstein was arrested in 2019, the system had a problem. He was no longer useful, he was now dangerous. And then, cameras malfunctioned, guards fell asleep, paperwork failed, footage disappeared. We were told this was incompetence, but incompetence that perfectly resolves a crisis for powerful people is indistinguishable from design. Epstein's death ended many things: testimony, cross-examination, discovery, plea bargaining, and even leverage reversal. Dead men tell no stories, and systems breathe easier. Here's the conclusion you're not meant to reach. Jeffrey Epstein was not the scandal. He was the mechanism. Man positioned between wealth, power, desire, and secrecy. He did not need to be brilliant. He needed to be trusted by the untrustworthy. And when he became inconvenient, the system did what systems always do. It removed the node, not the network. The Epstein files were not released to expose the truth. They were released to bury it under volume. And the fact that you are still watching means the strategy didn't fully work. Because the most dangerous realization is not that evil exists, it's that it operates comfortably. This story isn't about Epstein. It's about what power protects. And the reason this will never be over is because the system that created him never went away.